noticing my pause button again. A button I never noticed before in an entire 2 years of making videos. Do you know how much time that would have saved me? Chapter 2, The New Propaganda. In the days when kings were kings, Louis the XIV 11/5 15th. But what if I thought of it the other way? X is 10 and IV is 4. So the 14th. Louis the 14th made his modest remark, "Était what?" He was nearly right. But times have changed. What does it mean? L'état, c'est moi? Is it me? The estate? The estate is me. L'état, the estate, c'est, it is moi, me. He was nearly right. But times have changed. The steam engine, the multiple press, and the public school, that trio of industrial revolution, have taken the power away from kings and given it to the people. The people actually gained power, which the king lost. For economic power tends to draw after it political power, and the history of the Industrial Revolution shows how that power passed from the king and the aristocracy to the bourgeoisie. Universal suffrage and universal schooling reinforced this tendency, and at least even the bourgeoisie stood in fear of the common people, for the masses promised to become king. Today, however, a reaction has set in. The minority has discovered a powerful help in influencing majorities. It has been found possible so to mold the minds of the masses that they will throw their newly gained strength in the desired direction. In the present structure of society, this practice is inevitable. Whatever of social importance is done today, whether in politics, finance, manufacture, agriculture, charity, education, or other fields, must be done with the help of propaganda. Propaganda is the executive arm of the invisible government. Universal literacy was supposed to educate the common man to control his environment. Once he could read and write, he would have a mind fit to rule. So ran the democratic doctrine. But instead of a mind, universal literacy had given him rubber stamps inked with advertising slogans, with editorials, with published scientific data, with the trivialities of the tabloids and the platitudes of history, but quite innocent of original thought. Each man's rubber stamps are the duplicates of millions of others. So that when those millions are exposed to the same stimuli, all received identical imprints. It may seem an exaggeration to say that the American public gets most of its ideas in this wholesale fashion. The mechanism by which ideas are disseminated on a large scale is propaganda. In the broad sense of the organized effort to spread a particular belief or doctrine. I am aware that the word propaganda carries to many minds an unpleasant connotation. Yet, whether in any instance propaganda good or bad depends on the merit of the cause urged, and the correctness of the information published. In itself, the word propaganda has certain technical meanings which, like most things in the world, are neither good nor bad, but custom makes it so. I find the word defined in Funk and Wagnall's dictionary in 4 ways. 1. A society of cardinals, the overseers of foreign missions. Also, the College of Propaganda at Rome, founded by Pope Urban, the VIII. Well, if the I comes after the V, then you add it. So it's 5 is V, 6, 7, 8. Pope Urban VIII in 1627 for education of missionary priests. Sacred College de Propaganda Fide. Number 2. Hence, any institution or scheme for propagating a doctrine or belief system. 3. Effort directed systematically toward the gaining of public support for an opinion or a course of action. And 4. The principles advanced by propaganda. Propaganda pushes propaganda. The Scientific American, in a recent issue, pleads for the restoration to respectable usage of the fine old word propaganda. So they are pleading for the restoration to respectable usage of that fine old word, propaganda. There is no word in the English language, it says, whose meaning has been so sadly distorted as the word propaganda. The change took place mainly during the late war, when the term took on a decidedly sinister complexion. If you turn to the Standard Dictionary, you will find that the word was applied to a congregation or society of cardinals for the care and oversight of foreign missions, which it was instituted at Rome in the year 1627. It was applied also to the College of the Propaganda at Rome that was founded by Pope Urban VIII for the education of the missionary priests. Hence, in later years, the word came to be applied to any institution or scheme for propagating a doctrine or system. Boy, they just, Scientific American did very little research, huh? They said the same thing as the dang dictionary said. Like, oh my God, they really needed Google. Alright, they really needed not just Google, but they could have used ChatGPT for this. That was a straight copy, man. Them guys cheated that day. Sorry, serious study. Truth is mighty and must prevail, and if any body of men believe that they have discovered a valuable truth, it is not merely their privilege but their duty to disseminate that truth. If they realize, as they quickly must, that this spreading of the truth can be done on a large scale and effectively only by organized effort, they will make use of the press and the platform as the best means to give it wide circulation. Propaganda becomes a vicious and reprehensive. Propaganda becomes vicious and reprehensive only when its authors consciously and deliberately disseminate what they know to be lies, or when they aim at efforts which they know to be prejudicial to the common good. Propaganda, in its proper meaning, is a perfectly wholesome word of honest parentage and with an honorable history. The fact that it should be, One minute, please, I'm very thirsty. My thing. Okay. Honest parentage. And the fact that it should today be carrying a sinister meaning merely shows how much of the child remains in the average adult. Ooh, strict words. A group of citizens writes and talks in favor of a certain course of action in some debatable question, believing that it is promoting the best interest of the community. Propaganda? Not a bit of it. Just a plain, forceful statement of truth. But let another group of citizens express an opposing view, and they are promptly labeled with the sinister name of propaganda. What is sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander, says a wise old proverb. Let us make haste to put this fine old word back where it belongs and restore its dignified significance for the use of our children and our children's children. There's so many things in the children. We need propaganda. Let me pick what propaganda is the right kind, okay? Got you covered. Just watch every video I've ever made. I've got the good shit. Anyway, end quote. The extent to which propaganda shapes the progress of affairs about us may surprise even well-informed persons. Nevertheless, it is only necessary to look under the surface of the newspaper for a hint as to propaganda's authority over public opinion. Page 1 of the New York Times, on the day these paragraphs are written, contains 8 important news stories. 4 of them, or 1/2, are propaganda. The casual reader accepts them as accounts of spontaneous happenings, but are they? Here's the headlines which announce them. 12 nations warn China real reform must come before they give relief. Pritchett reports Zionism will fail. Realty men demand a transit inquiry. Our living standard, highest in the history, says Hoover Report. Take them in order. The article on China explains the joint report of the Commission on Extraterritoriality in China, presenting an exposition of the powers stand in the Chinese model. What it says is less important than what it is. It was made public by the State Department today, with the purpose of presenting to the American public a picture of the State Department's position. Its source gave it authority, and the American public tends to accept and support the State Department view. The report of Dr. Pritchett, a trustee of the Carnegie Foundation for International Peace, is an attempt to find the facts about this Jewish colony in the midst of a restless Arab world. When Dr. Pritchett's survey convinced him that in the long run Zionism would bring more bitterness, it's funny how this stuff was going on 100 years ago. Same news cycle. Don't tell me this is just conspiracy bullshit. They're playing the same scripts, children. The same scripts. Anyway, more bitterness and more unhappiness for both the Jews and the Arab. This point of view was broadcast with all the authority of the Carnegie Foundation, so that oh my gosh, this was actually before World War II. This was written before World War II. This was written before they got to Israel. So, isn't that interesting? With all the authority of the Carnegie Foundation, so that the public would hear and believe. The statement made by the president of the Real Estate Board of New York and Secretary Hoover's report are simply attempts to influence the public toward an opinion. These examples were not given to create the impression that there is something sinister about propaganda. They are set down rather to illustrate how conscious direction is given to events, and how the men behind the events influence public opinion. Excuse me, let me interject on this little side. One thing I've noticed about the public information given us, the public opinion we are corralled into, especially with all the algorithms, is pay attention to the use of adjectives. The adjectives themselves completely lead your emotional state. The egregious crime, the horrible Nazi, and it's like, I'm so tired of hearing descriptions that are supposed to support your ideology or opinion. It just makes me crazy. So, as such, they are examples of modern propaganda. At this point, we may attempt to define propaganda. Modern propaganda is a consistent, enduring effort to create or shape events to influence the relations of the public to an enterprise, idea, or group. This practice of creating circumstances and of creating pictures in the minds of millions of persons is very common. Like how we're all going to go to camps again. No, there's no evidence of it. We're all losing our rights. Oh, no evidence of that either. Oh, law enforcement is fascism. Have you ever looked at a history book? Virtually no important undertaking is now carried on without it. Whether the enterprise be building a cathedral, endowing a university, marketing a movie theater picture, floating a large bond issue, or electing a president. Sometimes the effect on the public is carried by a professional propagandist, sometimes by an amateur deputed for the job. The important thing is that it is universal and continuous, and in its subtotal it is regimenting the public mind every bit as much as an army regiments the bodies of its soldiers. So vast were the numbers of minds which can be regimented, and so tenacious are they when regimented, that a group at times offers an irresistible pressure before which legislators, editors, and teachers are helpless. The group will cling to its stereotype, as Walter Lippmann calls it, making of those supposedly powerful beings the leaders of the public opinion mere bits of driftwood in the surf. When an imperial wizard, sensing what is perhaps hunger for an ideal, offers a picture of a nation, all Nordic and nationalistic, the common man of the older American stock, feeling himself elbowed out of his rightful position and prosperity by the newer immigrant stocks, grasps the picture which fits in so neatly with his prejudices, and makes it his own. He buys the sheet and pillowcase costume, and bands with his fellows by the 1,000 to a huge group of powerful enough to swing the state elections, and throw a ponderous monkey wrench into the National Convention. Okay, let's understand what he's talking about, because you might not, just off the hand. He's not using those emotionally leading adjectives. He's talking about an imperial wizard is associated with Ku Klux Klan. So when the imperial wizard of the Ku Klux Klan senses what is perhaps a hunger for an ideal, he offers a picture of a nation all Nordic and nationalistic. These are proper adjectives. Nordic doesn't enlist in you. But if he would have said all white and Christian nationalist, you'd have a reaction, because that's the words that are trained into you. Isn't it nice? Knowledge is power. Power is freedom. Anyway, so he offers this thing. He's hungry for it. He wants this idea. He's like, all these new people are coming in, and I feel like I ain't got no room to be an American with my people anymore. They're taking my jobs. And so he says, no, this is America. Bam, I got my idea, I got my rules, I got my game. Okay? Just like the Muslims want their game, and so they're trying to force their game in America too. Everybody does it. So he grasps a picture which fits in so neatly with his prejudices, and he makes it his own. Then he buys the sheet and pillowcase, or the prayer rug, pillowcase costume, and bands with his fellows by the 1,000 into a huge group powerful enough to swing state elections. Yay! Invasion has been successful by mere whining. I love being a human. Oh, I shouldn't be this sarcastic. I'm trying to be educational. Alright. So, he's going to throw a ponderous monkey wrench into the National Convention. the time he's writing this, the Ku Klux Klan was trying to keep itself relevant. It was hosting town rallies. It was writing and speaking out. Why? Because it didn't want to lose its relevance. You know what's odd? Is since this time, naturally, they could thus their complete relevance. If they meet in basements. They have hand signals. They don't advertise who they are. And I think it's significant. You ask all kinds of questions. Where did we start to see them as bad? Was this non-emotional thing just meant to tell you what it is, and you've already been told to have a visceral reaction against it? So, and we don't approve of them, so they don't show up and they don't do rallies. It's a new group now. It's a couple new groups. And we don't like them either. In our present social organization, approval of the public is essential to any large undertaking. Hence, a laudable movement may be lost unless it impresses itself on the public mind. Charity, as well as business and politics and literature for that matter, have had to adopt propaganda. For the public, it must be regimented into giving money just as it must be regimented into tuberculosis prophylaxis. The Near East Relief and the Association for the Improvement of the Conditions of the Poor People of New York and all the rest have to work on public opinion just as though they had tubes of toothpaste to sell. Oh, we're proud of our diminishing infant death rate, and that too is the work of propaganda. Propaganda does not exist on all sides, propaganda does exist on all sides of us. And it does change our mental pictures of the world. Even if this be unduly pessimistic, and that remains to be proved, the opinion reflects the tendency that is undoubtedly real. In fact, its use is growing as its efficiency in gaining public support is recognized. This then evidently indicates the fact that anyone with sufficient influence can lead sections of the public, at least for a time and for a given purpose. Formerly, the rulers were leaders. They laid out the course of history by the simple process of doing what they wanted. And if, nowadays, the successors of rulers, those whose position or ability gives them power, can no longer do what they want without the approval of the masses, they find in propaganda a tool which is increasingly powerful in gaining that approval. Therefore, propaganda is here to stay. We're just going to keep reading, I think. Let me see. Oh, yeah. Just keep on keeping on. It was, of course, the astounding success of propaganda during the war that opened the eyes of the intelligent few in all departments of life to the possibilities of regimenting the public mind. He's speaking of World War I. Remember, America didn't want to go into the wars, and they had to be persuaded. This is why we have false flag operations. Oh, homework? Well, go look it up. At any rate, they wanted more people to join and believe in America, so they made their Uncle Sam posters and a lot of other propaganda to change the public sentiment. And the public didn't join the war, willingly want to join the war, until it felt that it was insulted or attacked itself. That's my false flags. Okie dokie. The American government and numerous patriotic agencies developed a technique which to most persons accustomed to bidding for public acceptance was new. They not only appealed to the individual by means of every approach, visual, graphic, and auditory, to support the national endeavor, but they also secured the cooperation of key men in every group, persons whose mere word carried authority to hundreds of thousands of followers. Thus they automatically gained the support of fraternal, religious, commercial, patriotic, social, and local groups whose members took their opinions from their accustomed leaders and spokesmen, or from the periodical publications which they were accustomed to read and believe. At the same time, the manipulators of patriotic opinion made use of the mental cliches and the emotional habits of the public to produce mass reactions against the alleged atrocities, the terror, and the tyranny of the enemy. It was only natural after the war ended that intelligent persons should ask themselves whether it was possible to apply a similar technique to the problems of peace. Keeps going down. As a matter of fact, the practice of propaganda since the war has assumed very different forms from those prevalent 20 years ago. This new technique may fairly be called the new propaganda. It takes account not merely of the individual nor even of the mass mind alone, but also and especially of the anatomy of society, with its interlocking group formations and loyalties. It sees the individual not only as a cell in the social organism, but as a cell organized into the social unit. Touch a nerve at a sensitive spot and you get an automatic response from certain specific members of the organism. Yeah, need a drink. Right, give me a thumbs up in the comment section if you've made it this far, and if you can handle my shenanigans this long, please like and subscribe. Okay. Or watch more and more and more and more, and tell your friends. Tell them I'm fun, I'm entertaining. I don't know what the brain rot is, but you know, I'm brain not rot. Brain grok. Ooh, I'm brain grok. Okay. Are we almost done with this chapter? Soon! I promise you soon. I said stop. No, it's only 2 minutes left. Okay, let's do it. It takes into account not merely of the individual, nor even of the mass mind alone, but also, and especially, of the anatomy of society, with its interlocking group formations and loyalties. It sees the individual not only as a cell in the social organism, but as a cell organized into the social unit. Touch a nerve at a sensitive spot, and you get an automatic response from certain specific members of the organism. Business offers graphic examples of the effect that may be produced upon the public by interested groups, such as textile manufacturers losing their markets. This problem arose not so long ago, when the velvet manufacturers were facing ruin because their product had long been out of fashion. Analysis showed that it was impossible to revive the velvet fashion within America. Anatomical hunt for the vital spots. Paris, obviously. But yes and no. Paris is the home of fashion. Lyons is the home of silk. The attack had to be made at the source. It was determined to substitute purpose for chance and to utilize the regular sources for fashion distribution and to influence the public from these sources. A velvet fashion service, openly supported by the manufacturers, was organized. Its first function was to establish contact with the Lyons manufactories and the Paris concierges to discover what they had been doing, to encourage them to act on behalf of velvet, and to help in improper exploitation of their wares. An intelligent Parisian who was enlisted in the work, or an intelligent Parisian was enlisted in the work. He visited Lanvin and Worth, Aggs and Pitot, and others, and it induced them to use velvet in their gowns and hats. It was he who arranged for the distinguished Countess this or Duchess that to wear the hat or the gown. Excuse me, my body's really acting up right now. And as for the presentation of the idea to the public, the American buyer, or the American woman of fashion, was simply shown the velvet creations in the Atlar, don't know this word, in the Atlar of the dressmaker or the milliner. She bought the velvet because she liked it and because it was in fashion. The editors of the American magazines and fashion reporters of the American newspapers likewise subjected to the actual, although created, circumstance reflected it in their news, which, in turn, subjected the buyer and the consumer here to the same influence. The result was that what was at first a trickle of velvet became a flood. A demand was slowly but deliberately created in Paris and America. A big department store, aiming to be a style leader, advertised velvet gowns and hats on the authority of the French couturiers. Don't know the word. Don't know French. And quoted original cables received from them. The echo of the new style was heard from hundreds of department stores throughout the country, which wanted to be style leaders too. Bulletins followed dispatches. The mail followed the cables, and the American woman traveler appeared before the ship news photographers in velvet gown and hat. The created circumstances had their effect. Fickle fashion was veered to velvet, was one newspaper comment, and the industry in the United States again kept thousands busy. The new propaganda, having regard to the constitution of society as a whole, not infrequently serves to focus and realize the desires of the masses. A desire for a specific reform, however widespread, cannot be translated into action until it is made articulate, and until it has been exerted sufficient pressure upon the proper law-making bodies. Millions of housewives may feel that manufactured foods deleterious to health should be prohibited, but there is little chance that their individual desires will be translated into effective legal form unless their half-expressed demand can be organized, made vocal, and concentrated upon the state legislature, or upon the federal Congress in some mode which will produce the results they desire. Now, whether they realize it or not, they may call upon propaganda to organize and effectuate their demand. But clearly, it is the intelligent minorities which need to make use of propaganda continuously and systematically. In the act of proselytizing minorities in whom selfish interests and public interests coincide lie the progress and development of America. Only through the active energy of the intelligent few can the public at large become aware of and act upon new ideas. Small groups of persons can and do make the rest of us think what they please about a given subject. But there are usually proponents and opponents of every propaganda, both of whom are equally eager to convince the majority. All right. Yay! The end of that chapter. We'll be back.